Hello, today is your day to actually wake up to hope at the table of redemption. We are in season 1, building bridges of hope and redemption in crises. We are in part 3, global voices in leadership on resilience, faith, and transformation. And today's episode features the global voice of my colleague, Cecilia Zhou from China. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for my next episode or my current episode of the Table of Redemption. I'm bringing you this content at a time of major transition in my life and in the lives of all of my colleagues at Harvard Graduate School of Education and just Harvard in general. For our first season, I am sitting and having space with my colleagues as we wade through decisions, overcome grief, as we are getting jobs or as we are going back to our families, long flights internationally, coming back and forth. It's so much going on. But that's happening also within a world that is filled with some sort of disruption here, a war there, tragedy there. And we are here as just human beings. And for my podcast, I want this to be a table of redemption, a place we can sit down, a warm place to sit with friends and just heal together and just have a conversation and help you learn some stuff in the meantime. Today, my guest is Cecilia. She is a colleague of mine who I hold dearly to my heart from Harvard Graduate School of Education, who's been there when this framework was being born. She was also a peer reviewer in my class with Dr. Linda Nathan, and we worked together. And so she's seen my thoughts. Okay. So whereas many guests have seen the video of that Harvard did on my work, how to dream after disaster, or colleagues have we talked about it in our group. She's read through my thoughts in our class together with Dr. Linda Nathan, and I thought it was so befitting to have her come back to this table in my very first podcast of my whole life and just allow her space to dream, allow her space to share her platform with us, and just look at her brilliance through the lens of redemption. So, to you, Cecilia, can you please tell us today what brings you to the table of redemption?
Hi everyone, I'm Cecilia. And then I have been witnessing Rushing's amazing journey since September last year when I read the first draft of the framework, when I had so many confusions on why redemption, why these pillars, and then to the one final draft when we chatted at Harvard Kennedy School in the lobby. I remember it
Mhm.
was such a busy time. We managed to squeeze time to do one final review before submission, and then after reading the final draft, it all made sense to me because after like a whole semester of getting to know her, I had more understanding of what happened to her project, to her school, to her work before coming to Harvard. And then after finishing reading this, I asked Rasheen, what do you plan to do after this now that the class is wrapped up and then you have one more semester, but then what? And she's
Mhm.
like, I'm gonna do a podcast. And she is doing a podcast. So yeah, that is what's bringing me to the table of redemption. I see, and at first I was the skeptic one. I was a skeptical one. I had so many confusions on religion, on belief, on why redempting yourself in the first place. But then I think we both grew a lot in that year of practices, me personally as well. So I'm happy to be able to share what I think of the framework and also overall the purposes, the resilience, my understanding of all of that. So thank you, Rasheen, for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Cecilia is in China right now. So our podcast is at 7 a.m. my time, but 7 p.m. her time.
And
So this is
yeah.
quite a sacrifice for her to be here. And more specifically, I thought she'll be a great person to have eyes and ears and words to speak about the framework, but also through the lens of this framework. I'm here to also get her story. So my guests are just here, not just as brilliance and not just as Harvard and Harvard brand, but we literally go through stuff and we literally survive stuff and we literally get up and keep going and all this other stuff. So for me, in asking Cecilia, I also watched her journey. I also read her entries, and gave feedback on her work as well. And so Cecilia has worked on and built in the pandemic and beyond a music business, right? Cecilia has
Yep.
also had her father to pass away in the middle of our degree. I'm gonna try not to cry because my dad died 3 years ago, and the week he died, I lost 15 pounds in 1 week. I never thought it was possible. So I still don't even know how she's smiling on this camera, right? And then also, Cecilia is an intricate part of the Hugsy community, and also the Asian community. So having a voice that to me is all encompassing and helping to paint the picture of what redemption really looks like for all cultures, all races, all parts of the world is very critical to me. So when can you give us a bit more context about how your journey before Hugsy, at Hugsy, and where you are right now? Hugsy means Harvard Graduate School of Education. That's what we call it. So Cecilia, just give us a background about you and what you do and everything that we need to know before we ask the interview questions.
Mhm. So right before Huxley, I was in Vancouver. I spend most of my times in Vancouver nowadays. I travel across the Pacific to visit families for sure. But then before coming to Huxley, I had a music business. It has two sides of the business. One side is music post-production. So we do a lot of scoring for film, games, commercials, interactive experiences, live installations, you name it. And then on the other side, we have a contemporary online music school. So in the Chinese context, most people would associate music teaching to instrument playing or performance, basically. But then we do completely the opposite. We teach students how to create, how to compose, right? How to write your song, how
Mm,
to produce your music, or even how to, film score a film or score anything with visuals in it.
mm,
Basically, we want to teach students to be able to express themselves through the lens of music. So
mm.
that is what the company did, and that is what brought me to Hugsy. And then prior to that, I was a chemical engineer, and then
Oh,
for all the time, I was a chemical engineer, and then, but on the side of like chemical engineering, the pursuit of chemical engineering, I started a nonprofit back in 2013 on aiming to provide more resources and books basically to kids in rural parts of China. That was before the smaller primary schools were consolidated into bigger ones because back then there were schools with one or two teacher and 20 to 30-ish students, and they were in really rural parts of China, and they lack extracurricular books or
mm,
physical education appliances like footballs, basketballs, volleyballs, and
mm,
then they never had a proper, music lesson or art lesson. So I started a nonprofit to do that in 2013. It has been ongoing until today, but then they slightly changed the focus to something that they need at the moment. So that is my association with education per se. And then that part has just been my passion. And then I moved on to my current job, and then I realized I want proper foundation on what is education, like teaching philosophies or even, psychology, educational psychology, things like that. And
Mhm.
then also hands-on practices to see what people around the world are doing. And then that brought me to Huxley. And then after graduating, I will go back to Vancouver and, move on to the next chapter of the business. It's a small business. We consider it a family business. So yeah, that's a bit about me, I guess.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm learning that you're a chemical engineer. That is pretty amazing to me. Like, that's why I love this platform so far. Just learning so much that outside of the academia or the pressures. So launching a podcast after we're done was intentional because all the pressures, all the day to day, all the assignments, everything. I can't think to ask you, or if you said it, I didn't hear it the way I hear it now. And the
I'm
way
pretty sure the way I put it is I'm a certified plumber in the state of Wisconsin because that comes with a chemical engineering degree. So I put that as my fun fact all the time, but then it takes some brain twister to think that I was a chemical engineer but not a plumber. But
yeah.
anyways, I just list it as one of my fun facts. People laugh all the time.
Well, hey, you make me laugh, and I could use a laugh today. It is just so
Yeah.
beautiful. Can you take me back a little bit to when you speak about rural China? Because this
Mhm.
platform wants to also paint the depths of what redemption looks like. In other words, the distance for children, how furthest from the opportunity, furthest from what the norm is for the average kid who may have access to music lessons. So Cecilia and I have that bond in music. Everyone knows about Legacy School of Performing Arts Training Institute. It is in rural Gaston County, Florida, as have been my entire career, that I specialize in rural arts development, nonprofit founder, nonprofit development, entrepreneurship, and making sure that I serve the last, the lost, the least, but with the highest of integrity and artistic excellence as those who have had this all their lives. So when Cecilia is talking about the rural parts of China, it touches my heart. But I also have never been there, so I don't know if yours match mine. Are we serving kind of the same population? So what does rural China look like in terms of you bringing music there, or you bringing kids to your organization all these years?
Yes, so I did both actually. I did went in there. That was 12, actually 13 years ago. And then things have changed a lot. And I kind of have to put a disclaimer right here, as in China is a huge country. It's like so big. I haven't visited every single provinces in China. So
Mhm.
what saying is what I saw back then, like 13 years ago in one province in China and
Okay.
in the dozens of schools I personally visited. And then every province is different. Sometimes even like within the same city, it's different. So
Mhm.
what I did back then is I'm pretty sure that left behind children is no longer like a foreign concept to you at this point. Basically, a lot of parents or adults in rural parts of China migrate to bigger cities for more work opportunities. And then what happens is that their kids are left behind to live with their grandparents. And then
Mm.
in that circumstances, the kids only see their parents a couple times a year when they have breaks from work, and then most of the time they live a very different life when you are with your parents and when you're with your grandparents, and a lot of them for us, we focus primarily on primary school students, and then the education system is also a bit different from the one in the States. I know again it varies from city to city, but for the places I visited, the kids from grade one or kindergarten, actually, K to 4,
Mhm.
go to those schools I helped. And then they adapt a complex teaching model, which means sometimes there's only one teacher in the classroom, and then he or she is teaching 4 grades, multiple
Mhm.
subjects. So
Wow.
they kind of have to do this rotation of, hey, group one or one graders, you focus on math at the moment, and then I'm gonna give a lecture to grade fours on, I don't know, Chinese or on political science per se, and then they would like rotate in between. And then, so given that there was a huge lack of teachers and then teaching resources to help, so what happened is only the main subjects, which were Chinese, math, and English, were prioritized, and
Mhm.
then the other subjects like art, music, PE were given less attention. Sometimes they would use like teaching aids or pre-recorded materials to help the students to have a glimpse at the world of art or music.
Mhm.
So it's really different school to school, because even the schools have different lack of materials or different conundrums per se. So
Yeah.
what we did is first we brought books and categorized them into different genres. So basically we help build libraries for those schools so that the kids, when they have downtime, they have books to borrow. Because what happened is that the kids have to travel on foot for
Ooh.
30 minutes to 1 hour and 30 minutes one way to go to school,
One way.
because they are in the mountains. And then when school is finished, it is because of government funding and some nonprofit funding, they were able to have lunch at school, because otherwise they would need to travel 4 times per day. So that helped a lot. So they only travel twice per day. So basically, they wake up, do some chores, go to school, have a day of class, and then go back to school, go back home, and then help with the housework, like farming and you know, chores, and because they live with grandparents, that they also have to help their grandparents as well. So basically they have no extracurricular education or extracurricular resources for them to learn. And books back then was, because that was before social media, that was before AI, that was before all of that. And then I figured books is the best medium for them to learn on their free time, and given they are interested in those books. So I brought books to their schools, and then I designed classes to
Mhm.
inspire their interest in those books. So like say I have a book on science or chemistry, we would do some really simple experiments on those things. Say I have a book on history of this specific dynasty of China, and then we would do some anecdotes or fun stories or like a theme
Mm.
in the dynasty to like lure them into reading more about this dynasty. So we designed those classes, we delivered them, and then along that, we gave music lessons. It was a
Yeah.
lot of their first time seeing a live instrument playing. And then we also designed not a coloring book for them so that they have something,
Mhm.
to draw on during their art classes. So that is what I did back in 2013 to 2017-ish. And then the schools started to disappear. They were consolidated into bigger schools, bigger primary schools. And then a lot of them are boarding schools, but that way they don't have to travel back and forth every day. And then they have teachers to teach like different subjects versus one teacher has to be proficient at all the subjects and multitasking all the time. So there are pros and cons, but then that happened. So we kind of stopped making those individual trips because the schools no longer existed. So instead, we brought those students whom we known for a couple of years now to the city, say in the summer. So we did summer camps. We took them out from the mountains to the cities to see, the city part of China, subways, not the sandwich, but like the tea subways. And
Yeah.
then also subways, like we took them to McDonald's, we
Mhm.
took them to really museums, historical part of the city, and then like the modern part of the city. So we did those summer camps, and then during COVID, we moved on to online teaching, and then we built a extracurricular center in the town center. So like th those were like villages, and then the next unit beneath village, and then the town center, right? So we had a extracurricular center at the town center. I would go there on every other week on the weekend to do some tutoring, do more like seminar-ish sessions, and then just hang out with them basically. So that is what I did. And then during COVID, we moved online, and now it's more like we still do camps whenever we can, and we also do like one-on-one funding programs. We have donors and we have scholarship recipients. We gave them scholarships, but not funding per se. So that is the nonprofit work that I've been doing throughout the years.
Yeah, it sounds really magnificent. Um, for that to be your work, because
Mhm.
when I was growing up, we grew up in rural communities. So that's how it even got in my mind, that in my heart, to take my work in that direction. We grew up what we call impoverished or below poverty, or in what they call the projects or something like that. I knew no different because we had so much love and fun, and we were also always either in the community or playing with our neighbors, or just having family. So it wasn't until I got to college and started majoring in music until I realized in the music books nothing was reflective of how I grew up. So I had to amp up my game to even keep up with what classical music is, or what all the Baroque period,
No,
the
it's
Rococo period,
counterpoint.
all you see, yeah, all these periods. I'm like, what? What was that? Because I didn't have the exposure there. So growing up in the rural communities, and growing up also in the rural black community, and then rural community, black community, and then the black church was my exposure to that. And if we wanted to have anything above that, we had to travel to the next town to get it. But thanks be to my parents, my mom, the late Mildred Joyce Jameson, she was a musician in the community, started community choirs, and was also an entrepreneur and had a cosmetology business. My dad had a contracting business. And so that was our only window into that there's more is possible. So when I started
Mhm.
working with rural communities in this, I would say in a like manner in which you started working with it, I knew it had to be in the nonprofit realm because of all of the needs that were there in that
Mhm.
capacity. So I'll say this, that when I did get my degrees in music and was able to sing professional opera and was able to do all these things, the last thing on my mind was taking what I call my shiny voice to the rural community, because I felt like it was my chance to go to Juilliard and my time to just go and do something bigger. But in my heart, I saw those images. And so
Mhm.
I'm saying all that to say that when you're sharing your story and your journey and your work on camera, I promise you it's doing great things in somebody's heart. It's like doing something amazing in my heart to make me bring up this story of redemption for me, because this is my first time seeing it in this way as you're saying yours. And I think another beautiful component is to be able to match up that, as you did a great job of trying to make sure we narrow down the context, is that not all rural communities in China or the provinces in China are created equal. right?
Mm,
So what
yeah.
would happen with the work that you did? I need not come to China and think that it's going to be like that everywhere. So I love the way you use your lens, help, use to paint that lens, to help us be a part of your world here at this table of redemption. So thank you for
Mm.
that. And I am so proud to be here to capture this. Does your organization, would you like to say the name of your organization, and anybody that you would like to pay tribute to for helping you with that at this time?
I do think I want to have a shout out to my mentor on this round. So I started this when I was in high school. I am absolutely a nobody. I'm a high school kid if you think about this. So I just saw someone posted that they would need books and this and that in their part of the city. I'm like, how can I help? Not only this school but more schools. So I started reaching out, DMing people on Chinese Twitter back then, and then nobody ever replied to me like those big trust funds or Red Cross, you name it. No one replied to me, but this one single organization in Anhui, he got back to me on, I call him 谢老师, which means teacher 谢 at this point. And then we are friends nowadays, but then he was the first one willing to introduce me to the schools, and
Wow.
then we actually did the extracurricular center together moving forward. And since we're on the topic of redemption, I always tell people, I think throughout this experience I gained much more than the students who we helped, or those schools, those teachers. Like my personal growth in this whole journey, it made me who I am. It enriched my life profoundly. And even because this year I had to fly back to China, and then it was such a drastic difference between, the vibrant Cambridge community, the
Yeah.
whole Harvard echo chamber versus when you are alone in China dealing with very complex life stuff. And then I was like, okay, so what is the point of working really hard? And then what are the changes you want to make in the world when you can't really even, help your family to the extent you want to? And then he actually took me back to the villages where we started to see like the ruins of some of the schools, like literally, because they were consolidated into bigger schools. Two schools we helped back in the days were turned into factories. And
Yeah.
then I went back to the schools, and then we did a lot of family visits to the students that we are giving to our scholarship recipients. So I was literally sitting in the deepest part of that mountain, and then sitting at the backyard of the student's place. And she just had an entire day of picking tea leaves so that they can sell the tea leaves for money. And then they spend 3 days collecting the tea leaves, and then they collected 1.8 kilograms in total. And one 500 grams would be 60 RMB, which is $12.
Oh,
So I was just sitting there, but then we were just chatting like friends. Like, what do you like to do? What's school like? Is there any boys on that you have a crush on? Or, do you like what you're studying? Or do you want, because she's in a vocational college. I'm like, do you like your major? Why did you choose this major? And do you like your mom? When does she annoy you? And when do you annoy her? Blah blah blah. So it was just like really small talks and chit chatty. And then that kind of reminded me why I did this in the first place, why I am doing the work I do now, and what I want to do in the future. I wouldn't say it's like clarity all coming to me, but it's helped me uh, be more focused at the present. So
yeah.
I have to say, I think this whole experience enriched or benefited me more than anyone. I'm really humble for everyone who helped me on this journey and those who are really willing to talk to us through all those visits. You know, the teachers, the government officials, we did encounter a couple, and then the nonprofit workers. And the villagers who just live there, and they would just offer you tea and sometimes cigarettes when you first visit them.
Okay.
It's just a very enriching experience for me, and I'm very, very grateful for all of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is so beautiful. This has turned out
Yeah.
to be such a beautiful interview so far, in terms of just painting a nice foundation that when
Hmm.
we bear the Harvard label, a lot of times so far people don't think you face anything. They don't even get the chance to know the root system, beyond your greatness or beyond, what got you there. The table of redemption it does just that. So all my interviews, I take the time to lay the groundwork, to lay that real foundation as thick as possible so that we can actually have some bouncing room when we start talking about maybe some more fun things or maybe some more things that have come out of these things. And you started that already, just talking about how from the time you started in 2013 with the nonprofit, with this dream that you had, to now seeing the schools make a lot more progress in terms of consolidating, in terms of having boarding schools, in terms of having redemptive moments to revisit, some of the work that you had done back then, and even the work you're doing on yourself as a leader and coming into your own identity in this particular time of transition. So, as I think of that, do you want to share a bit about your family? So, when you mentioned it's a family business, can you paint a little bit about your family? Like, can you talk to us and say hey to mom and tell us about your late dad as though he was just, give us some context about your family and how they have
Mm.
helped Cecilia be Cecilia today. And also, if you want to tell us your Chinese name or anything that's so
Yeah.
unique about you, this platform welcomes that.
So, I guess we had a slight confusion about the family business, which
Okay.
I totally understand. I think what I have with my business partners are extremely special, to the point that people get confused all the time.
Okay.
So I am a single child, which means I have no siblings. And
Oh,
then I met my best friend in middle school, grade 7, actually. So we've known each other for 20 years at this point. So we always say that we are each other's chosen family
oh,
because we had long distance friendship. Okay, so we only spent 2 years together, and then we she moved back to Canada, and then I was in China all the way until college, and then I moved to the States. So she also moved to the States. So basically, ever since 2012, we were never in the same city, but then we were lucky enough that we kept this friendship going, and then we are growing at the same pace towards the same direction, which is extremely rare. So we were able to be honest to each other, provide real feedbacks as they are so precious nowadays. People no
yeah.
longer give criticisms as harsh as they should be, but we always had that growing up, so we keep kind of educating each other without us noticing. So basically, when I finished master's program, she invited me to join her company. At first, I was really hesitant about this because I'm not a musician and she has a music business, which also explains why I now have a music business. I mean, co-own a music business. So
Mhm.
we're partners, and then the third partner was kind of in a similar context. So
Mhm.
that is the family business I refer to. It's a
Mhm.
chosen family business because
Awesome.
we run this business as a close-knit community. We were not aiming for, the biggest profit margin or, the most profitable products to launch. We want to have a business that's true to who we are. And, they're both educators as well. They actually teach much more than I do. They have really uh, kind hearts and as well. So we want to have a business with that we have full ownership and full control to. And we do want this business to be helping the students and the families, our clients,
Mhm.
and the society at large to have something great. It sounds so cliche, but that's why we call it a family business.
Mhm.
A lot of people come to me be like, hey, how do you find your investors? Or I want to invest into your business, or let's do a physical program together. We always turn those offers down because we keep saying it's a family business. We want it to be small and mighty and then
Yes.
great the way it is. So that was the family I referred to.
Yes, I love it.
Mhm.
I don't think I've heard it like chosen family like that
Yeah.
before. I love that. I love that you painted the picture and extended my vision to
Mhm.
include. I'm glad I asked about it because now I'm able to see that you are co-founder of this, which makes it mightier when you have partnerships and trusted partnerships that and collaborations. And when you talked about the feedback of today is definitely not what it was back then when you needed what we call in the Black church sharp rebukes. Okay.
Mhm.
Areas where we just like, oh, you said that, but you changed so much in that one little thing, but you didn't mind because the person that said it, you trusted that they knew what they were talking about. And so it is so beautiful the way you did that. Would you like to say their name, say hi to them? Anything?
I I think I should properly introduce the name of the company,
Please
which
do.
so it's called Ictus Audio, ICTUS. That's how we pronounce it. It has two parts of it. It's a post-production audio and also a music company side. And then Ictus is actually a conducting term. One of the founder is actually a conductor, a composer, and who conducts as well. And ictus is actually a music term in conducting. It refers to a strong accent or emphatic pulse in musical terms. So that's how we do it, and that is on the logo of the company. And then Sharon Yao, if you're ever listening to this, which I think they would, you guys are my chosen family. And yeah, I'm so surprised that it's your first time heard about the term chosen family. I think I've inherited it, I mean internalized it as part of my life to the point that I would take care of Sherry's mom if anything happened and she's not around, and vice versa. And I think that is also the special social phenomenon given the only child policy in
Yeah.
China. And I was, one of the many single children I mean, only child who found a chosen family. It's actually quite a popular term in China, as in you found your own support system, but in our case, it's more closeness, so it's a family. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So it's a thing. It's a real thing. It's not just a cliche. It's not just a term, but it is like it's a part of the culture, basically, in China. And what you're saying about your business partner is that what we call sister friends here, or what we
Yeah.
call best friends, or we call it, I'm sure someone else calls it chosen family. I just have not called it that or heard that.
Mhm.
But we have God sisters, God brothers, or spiritual
Mhm.
families or something like that. So not to get caught up in that, but I thought it was so unique to paint that picture as well, because to me, that's also a part of redemption. It is to
Mhm.
extend the very thing that you did not have in your particular family, and you are able to have an addition to that, and also just bring it together and still have a family unit, a family dynamic that works well, and it actually gets you all the things that you need, and so you're not missing out on those bonds and those relationships. The reason why I'm laying this foundation even further is because I want to talk a bit more now about your resilience, right? And
Mhm.
your purpose. And through the lens of the fact that you just lost dad. So would you be able to talk about, for one, in whatever order you want to, the purpose that you um have had, which is what we've talked about already. With the nonprofit, to me, is purpose. Being able to grow up in China, it embodies, it's shared with us without you saying and defining purpose as purpose, right? But then now we're getting into levels of resilience behind the purpose, and how you have been able to sustain your purpose and sustain your impact. But also a big item on the table is the loss of your dad. So please talk to us about that in whatever way you want to at this point.
Okay, so I guess it'd be a nice way to start with my name, my actual name,
Okay.
which I've been having debates on if I should get rid of Cecilia and go back to my Chinese name, but I feel like I've used Cecilia for 10 years at this point. It's also part of the who I am, and it's also a beautiful name. But then my Chinese name is Yin Quan, which means intelligent spring water.
Ooh.
Or sometimes, as I joke about it, smart water, if you may. So,
Yes. Y'all know the
so
brand, right? Smart Water brand. I just want people to catch up, like people that's watching.
yes, like smart water, it actually has a meaning to it. And then smart, I mean, the intelligent part is pretty obvious. When my parents have had me, they want me to be intelligent in one way or another. And but growing up, I figured the emphasis probably more on emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
as I do think that is what they try to lead by example by always being kind to people, always ask what's their perspective, and always ask what you can do better instead of blaming others. Because growing up, like now that I am an adult and I was in relationships and I watch my friends being in a relationship and watching their parents fight, it just occurred to me that my parents rarely fight. Growing up, I only remember them fighting once, and it was a bad one, but then they have the things sorted out. Most of the times, they had very, very reasonable communications. Like they would reason with each other, and one of them will make compromise real fast.
Mm.
And that also teaches me love is an action of service and compromise, which is everybody have different love languages, but that's how I receive it. Why was I on this topic? I think I just lost my train of thought. I was on topic of my name,
Yeah.
and
And
then
then
how
being
they
able.
lead by example, and then how, yeah, because okay, my point was that they were really kind to each other and they supported each other really well.
Mhm.
And to me, um, you treat people the way you treat the ones who are closest to you. And
Mhm.
also, which that is also what inspired me to start the nonprofits. Because people always ask me, Cecilia, why did you do that when you were a high school student? I was like, I don't know. It just felt natural to me. I just wanted to do something. And I did it. But then later, my friend Sherry revealed to me that it was an emotional urge to act, as saying, I saw this problem, I want to respond, and then I act on it. So I think all of those parts are from my parents' wisdom. And then that goes on to resilience, because you
Yeah.
asked me what is resilience. And I think it has a lot to do with the second half of my name, which is Quan, which means spring water.
Mhm.
And then water is actually a very important concept or artifact in terms of Chinese culture, especially when you write poems or when you study Confucianism or Taoism. Water is like always, always there. And to me, being resilient is less about the ability that you can, bounce back or fight back as some people might identify. For me, it's more like how to maintain your inner strength and fulfill your family and social obligations and responsibilities through pers persistence and
Mhm.
also endurance. That is more of my definition of resilience.
Mhm.
And I think to me, it's different in one way that I grew up under the impression that some part of my family carries really bad genes, and then we are more prone to cancer. And then my dad has cancers 4 times in his life.
Ooh.
And then I have been exposed to the dark side or like the heavier topics of life ever since I was a kid. And then that made me voluntarily want to take more, family responsibility or at least taking care of myself, like be a responsible student or be a responsible daughter. And so that is how I was brought up. And then resilience was built within it, sort of.
Ooh.
And then now coming back to water. Water is this like huge body of fluid that will take everything. And a lot of times instead of like fighting the hardship, it will let it flow through it.
Ooh.
And then you are still like who you are and but you're stronger. So it's more like I take water as part of me to build resilience, to be able to be open-minded to many concepts or differences in opinions or hardships, and then like build my inner strength through everything, like compliments as well, hardships for sure, and then grow stronger, be more resilient.
Mm.
Am I
Yeah.
translating this well? I think it's
Oh,
deep rooted in the Chinese part of me.
yes. You do it. That's what I want. I want the Chinese part of you. That's what I
Yeah.
want. And you just opened up an entire portal of vision for so many people. Because what you're saying to me, based on what I'm hearing,
Mhm.
resilience for, let's say, the average person, let's not say American, let's not go by continent, let's just say in
Yeah.
general. Resilience
Mhm.
is the ability, like you said, to fight back or forge forward or plunge through and come out like flexing, like I'm strong. Look at me
Mhm.
roar. And what you're saying is that in the Chinese culture, it could be that if you want it to be, but by the nature, but through nature, your actual nature, you're able to just go through tough times naturally. It seems like it's just a part of the natural makeup of a person that you don't have to force it. That when you look at the body of water, and I'm sure there are other elements in other parts of the religion or other parts of the country that make up the other components, right? As I've looked into other religions and other faiths and other aspects over my years. But this one is most interesting to me, and I love the way you took the time to help us see that water that when I go, so say for instance, if when I go into next week with your definition and with the Chinese culture version of it, next week starting Monday, if I get a hard trial that comes on my plate, on my table of redemption, I am to be more flexible and to sink into it and flow through it because I am in water. I am looking at it as water. It's going to wash itself out or wash it. It's going to flow somehow. And the fact that I'm able to do that means that I am resilient.
Mhm. Because
Yeah.
it's it's really a quiet inner power that you don't
Ooh,
really see what I'm talking about. Because
okay.
like because literally there's a Chinese saying, it's not the literal translation, but goes between the lines of nothing in the world is softer than water, yet nothing is better at overcoming the hard.
Ooh.
Because water is so adaptable. And there's also another saying related to water, basically saying 水滴石穿. It means that water has the ability to wear down a stone through perseverance. Because literally one drop a day, and have you seen those caves on of different calcium or mineral composites in different shapes, and that is through water, and it
Wow.
just takes a very, very long time, and you don't see a drastic change overnight. So like water and resilience really to me embodies this huge adaptability and persistence in a really quiet manner.
Oh, that's
It's
good.
not a direct confrontation, right? You swerve it and then see what comes out of it.
Yeah. Oh gosh, this is so good. This is so good because you know why? Let's now delve into what the framework is talking about leadership redemption. That you're
Mm.
educating me, that I can educate a type of leader that for one, the framework that I've written up says not all resilience is created equal. And so what you're introducing me to is a quiet inner power form of resilience that takes into account the nature of a person. So my nature may be roar, like, oh, let's get a boat and swim. Let's get the maybe the biggest way that we can biggest solution. Let's get the biggest solution to bring down this devastation. Someone else may have a quieter way, but it's still just as powerful. It's still to be regarded and respected as just as a powerful solution to be able to still conquer the leadership challenges that we face as a form of redemption. So this is giving people to me more hope that they can see themselves as that kind of leader that can take on larger challenges, especially in the time of disruption that we're in, crises, complexity, turbulence, and everything. So as I'm also listening to your definition, I hear the word resilience through water because of the ability to sparkle and also shine. There's lights that come off of water. There are rays of hope, rays that come off of water. So as we are watching the rivers or the oceans or the seas, to me that's a byproduct of what a person looks like who have a quiet inner strength and who has that ability. They still sparkle, they still shine, they still glow, and it's because of the ability to flow. Am I in the right direction here?
I do absolutely agree with what you have said, and then there's kind of a element that we can I want to add on to it
Please do.
is when you think about where water flow, it's actually decided by the potential differences, but not the size of the rock,
Okay.
right? So, say water flows from a place of higher altitude to a place of lower altitude, hence like waterfalls or your faucets per se. And then how I view hardship or like leadership was this kind of water like resilience is that you go across it. You don't try to move, the rock out of your way. You move across it, but you still go to your destination. So it might change the way you want your trajectory to look like, but you get to where you want to be in the first place. And the rocks, however many of them, they will not change your destination.
Mm.
That's,
Mm.
another like more visual way to think about this.
Because this
Hmm.
this now get into to me the next part of the question is sustaining your impact. Because
Hmm.
if I take what you're saying, your definition of resilience, and I match it up with the first half of the foundation we built on purpose, what have you done with your platforms, with your life at such a young age? How have you worked through a lot of the challenges at a young age up until now, even going through Hugsy, even surviving grief or dealing with grief? You're helping me make so much sense out of how you can be on the outside look so calm, but on the inside you could be, the water can roar. The water can do many things. Water can have waves, high waves, low waves, and crashing. So in other words, when Cecilia and I are talking about water, it is not saying all the water is peaceful and still. It's not saying
No.
that all the water is going to be cooperative, right? And that's the significance of me understanding and trying to flow with what her definition of resilience is, and also the Chinese culture way of living through the elements of water. So not all of them, the water weather storms in itself. The water reaches different altitudes is what she's saying as well. So just to bring the audience up to speed, that some are high tables, some are low tables, what they call high tide, low tide. And what our job is as leaders or founders, or even if you're not in leadership, you still have some kind of responsibility, right? That's going to pull on your resilience, your ability or your propensity to be resilient. And as Cecilia is talking to us today, I hope it's very clear to you that that is also to me a way to sustain your impact. So if you don't have to spend time bamming the rocks down, you don't have to spend all your energy trying to move a mountain. It's like in the Black church, we say, Lord, don't remove the mountain, give me the strength to climb. And so at this level, it's saying that your resilience in this form of what Cecilia is describing is built in, that you sustain your impact. It's built into me. I mean, would you agree, Cecilia, or do you have another way of kind of like thinking about it in a different context?
I really like how you kind of mirror this the philosophy or concept we're talking about into, paraphrase it into another context so that everyone are on the same page. And I guess to summarize it with another quote, which I shall share the excerpt with you, is"上善若水，水利万物而不争," which means the highest virtue is water. It's from Lao Tzu. I don't know if you have heard of this Chinese philosopher. So it's basically saying the highest virtue is like water. Water benefits all things and does not compete. And that
Mm.
is what I think good leadership should resembles. So basically resilience coming from supporting others selflessly because you are not asking for anything and
Ooh, ooh, that's good.
adapting to them without direct confrontation. But this is by no way saying you don't solve miscommunications or you don't settle disagreement. It's just you avoid confrontation. It's kind of like you don't yell at each other, but you reason with each other with a lot of respect, things like that. So that is how I would tie, the water symbol resilience to leadership was like all together.
Yeah, yeah, that is beautiful. Can you take us through that quote one more time? Because I want people to hear you as you spoke it in, was that Chinese or Mandarin?
Mandarin.
Okay, as you spoke it in Mandarin, can you speak it again? And then
Mhm.
also, was that Lao Tzu?
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard of, yeah.
It's a lot of Taoism or 道德经, depending on which type of translation it is. It's actually so funny. I had a lot of my first times at Huxley, and learning more about Asian Oriental philosophy was another one of them. Because growing up, I've heard this quote like hundreds of times, but I never like sit down and actually let it sink with me and then to decipher, what's the wisdom behind it. It was at Huxley in one of the readings, Dao De Jing was assigned, and which impelled me to read more about the philosophy behind it. So the saying is "上善若水，水利万物而不争," which translates to the highest virtue is like water. Water benefits all things and does not compete.
Ooh.
Yeah, that is, what I think of resilience,
Ooh.
leadership, thing altogether comes down
Oh.
to the quote. And
Yes.
it's kind of who I am.
Yes.
I
Yes.
try to who I try to be. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. In my other episodes, I say it again, honey. Say it again.
I'll try to find a nice explanation, like, a nice emoji, not emoji, picture for you to insert
Okay, that'll
somewhere.
be so good. That'll be excellent. So, as we have delved in purpose, we've delved into resilience, and to me, just we went on to sustaining impact, all in that same definition, in that same way of thinking, right? In that same philosophical vein, that if you decide that you want to utilize the Oriental philosophical approach as an underpinning of why and how you lead. I want this podcast to give you permission to do that. That not all resilience is created equal, not all leadership is created equal, not all redemption looks the same. Cecilia, in my other podcast episodes, I've been sharing how I have been able to define redemption in so many different ways. Most people go online and look at it as a place of atonement or repentance or returning to something. But to me, what I initially talked about in when I started writing is a redemption arc. The redemption arc is a path that you go over. So from one trial or one problem of practice, which is what we call it at Hugsy, from one leadership problem of practice all the way here, there's an arc. And between here, you receive levels of transformation that you then call redemption. So in that, it's also adaptive leadership. That's also transformational leadership. That's also forms of leadership that kind of like take the hierarchy out of it so that you are free to take your journey to redemption as that leader as best you can, or with what I call in music to your best, your level's best, right? So as we then talk about leadership well-being, the well-being of what it is to find yourself on the redemption side of this. Do you have any definitions or any wisdoms or even Oriental philosophies you can continue to share with us about the impact of well being on who we are as leaders and what it means to be able to take very good care of yourself while you're doing this amazing work?
So, as I define mental well-being, like, because so many things are going on in my personal life right now and also at work, and I have a degree half finished.
Mhm.
I'm actually still looking for, a roommate for the rest of the year.
Mhm.
Things are so chaotic. And then how I do like my mental well-being checking is how well I can focus on the present.
Ooh.
And how do I feel as of the present? Say
Okay.
I am like a flowing pound of water or fluids. I've go through this many hardships and then I'm going to the other side of the river.
Mhm.
But at this point, in between these two rocks, how do I feel? Am I like turbulent or am I spiraling or am I stagnant or am I just like chilling as if I'm at a slower part of a drafting journey.
Mhm.
So I would take a moment and see where am I at and how best can I focus at the single present without looking back on the the rocks that I detoured or, the splash that I make. And without looking ahead on, oh, in 10 meters, I'm gonna have a altitude change. So how focused I can be at this moment is how I define my well-being. The more anxious I am, the less capable that I am to be fully present at the moment. So that is how I do like my self checker of my well-being
Mhm.
level.
Yeah.
And then it also kind of um if I have more time to do other than a checking, I try to decipher as many causal relationships
Mm,
of this moment to the past and project what might happen and do a bit of strategic planning. But then very recently, what has come to me is that there's no optimal way of planning and going to the other destination. This is something that I really struggled a lot in my past work experience and my own life as well. I plan a lot and I get really upset when something goes against my plan. After just 2 weeks ago, I was traveling with family and friends. I organized this whole trip to spend some quality time with my mom and introduce my family to my chosen family. It's like this big trip that I planned for. And then when we arrived at one city, first of all, I had a really bad cyst infection on my back. So in the entire trip, I could not sleep on my back. I have to
mm,
sleep on the side or like sleep on my stomach, which is really awful. And then the temperature is much, much warmer than it used to compared to the previous years. And then there was a flood that was, impacting where we wanted to go. But then in the end, it's kind of like, oh, these are the hardships in the trip. But then what is the whole point of this trip? Is it to see the waterfall that is mesmerizing, or is it to introduce them to each other, or to be present with your families in the car having conversations, debriefing about the previous year and looking forward to the other? So that is, you know, what I learned on optimizing is the best way to optimize because at the current moment you can only do what you can do, and if I were someone that I have to lead, I would first uh write down what are the things that are out of my control, that are things I do not want to change, that I would just accept. And then when it comes to myself, I have to be kind and do that to myself as well. So that is, along the water metaphor or like the drafting tour that we've been on for the past hour,
mhm.
at this moment, what are the things you can change? What are the things you can let go? How would you treat yourself as if you were treating your loved one? So that is, my summary on well-being, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love when you basically talked a bit about you're being present, but then you also helped leaders look at the ability to have a strategic plan in place without always having
Hmm.
to write everything down internally, right? Internally, look inside and dig a bit deeper and question yourself. Question your ability to be well. One of the things I write about is that when I describe well being in the framework, it is that you are a well that's being a flow, an overflow. You are the well. You are the well of hope. You are the well of inspiration. You are the well of knowledge. And people are drawing from your well. And then how are you being in those moments? And so for me, if I look through your lens, you're being present. You are a well that's being present. You are a well that's being intentional, that's being strategic, that's being wise enough to know your own limitations. So I want to make sure to paint that picture really strong because when I consider all that we've talked about for the last hour or a little bit better, better than an hour, we are literally painting a picture for this leader of redemption through the part that from a young age, Cecilia has endured, several challenges, right? And that she is also a face, from the Asian community that's telling you right here and there, don't just look at me because you think I have it all together. Don't just think that everything is great. We have a life, we have a legacy that we're leaving. So from the beginning, she started the nonprofit when she was young, 2013. Then she goes on to be able to, for one, let's go back further. Her chosen family, seventh grade, right? Let's go then to high school, and also giving a shout out to her mentor, who helped her, who believed in her, the first person to help her distribute, right? In other words, access. Someone has to help you just garner access to the things that you need. As Cecilia goes forward, she's shared with us some vulnerable things in terms of just being able to come from one providence, one village, or one area, and it's almost like she's climbing up more and more and more to the place that she's able to help others as she's also helping herself. That's what she was basically saying, that she's finding out that in meaningful work, that's at the foundation of redemption. You finding meaningful work, you're finding meaningful purpose in how you're helping someone else. You end up being the one transformed. So as she took us through that, she then allowed us to have a glimpse into the Oriental philosophy of what it means to be resilient, what that means. And she took us to the element of water, right? And through water, it is, and she took us through the definition that basically says that it does not compete. It don't even try to compete with water. You will not win. Even a tablespoon of water, if it goes down the wrong pipe, you will drown. It goes down the
Yeah.
wrong pipe in your body, you will drown. So, as she has done that, she's also given me a look into sustaining impact just through this one resilience, one area that when you're talking about the rocks and the things that shape your resilience through this analogy, then by virtue of that we're talking about water, your ability to flow with the current. Water has currents. It is not all peaceful. It is not all still. It is not all, it's a major killer if you don't handle it right. So when we talked about leadership redemption, we're talking about being able to handle it in a more quiet, inner manner that we probably haven't talked about in the podcast just yet. So I love this. And as we're here right now, bringing it current, she talked about being able to strategically handle emotional intelligence in the middle of a leadership decision. And who are you as a leader? You are you first. So if you're not able to scale your own comeback, your own redemption, I don't know who else can or will. And that's at the core of what this framework does. It takes our guests through their own lives just to look at how they have taken their hard work, dedication, money, lack of all support, and they are still here. And now she's at Hugsy. And because her dad passed away, she needed to go back home to China to see about family. So she'll be gearing up in a few more weeks to come back to the States. And all that's going to be required there, she is giving us these wisdoms and gems right in the middle of a transition. That's pretty hard for me. Okay. So as we kind of like finish up our podcast, one question that's not on there on the updated part is spirituality and lifespan. And if
Mhm.
you are able to talk about those at all in terms of your leadership journey or your journey from one country to the next or all these different things as a part of the whole person that makes up the one that we will learn from or the ones that you're a co-founder with. You are a whole person, so I wouldn't want to get out the podcast without delving into your thoughts, your personal thoughts on spirituality, which can also be described as human intuition. That also can go hand in hand. And what you project as lifespan of the leader and how that impacts them going forward.
So lifespan is actually what I had pre-decided when I was in grade 9. Because
Ooh,
back then I wanted to pursue chemistry
okay.
and then I wanted to cure cancer. And
Mm,
then back then I was very uneducated to the point that I felt like if I can have a groundbreaking research project or like a research outcome, and if the cost is my own health, I'm willing to do it. And
mhm,
then I had this relentless, probably too naive thought of sacrificing my own longevity for the greater good or like something meaningful or like anything meaningful.
mhm,
And then, do I still stand by this? Yes. I think as long as every single day of my life has a purpose, served someone, I do not regret the decisions I make. So
mm,
nowadays, because like halfway through Huxley, or probably 2 months into the program, people ask you a lot, oh, because you kind of went over so where were you before this phase? You moved
yeah.
on to, so what do you want to do after graduation phase, right?
Mhm,
And then we have so many options. I think the least sacred resources on campus would be ideas and entrepreneurship ideas or like new proposals. But then to me, it's like, what do I really want to do? What would be meaningful to me? And what would the thing that I want to do that I will not regret in 5 years or in
ooh,
10 years? So that is how I make decisions nowadays. Because, say, if someone proposed a new business idea, I would ask myself, do I want to do this in 5 years? If the answer is no, I would not do it. Because why would you do something that's, not sustainable or that does not have a longer impact? So with that mindset, we kind of come to the conclusion because I was having a discussion with Sherry on the flight the other day on, what would be your thoughts if this plane crashes?
mhm,
Okay. And then our thought would be, so it crashed. Because it's not something that we can plan ahead, and there's, no regrets that there's nothing we can do about the situation, and we do not regret the decisions we board the plane, nor do we regrets on the business decisions we've taken or the peoples we've met or the conversations we've had. So at this point, I do think quality, I'm not saying length, lifespan is not important. I'm just saying having a good quality is way more important to me personally than the longevity. And especially, I think what struck me the most was at my dad's funeral. It's kind of hard to deliver a speech. I was like, I think I flew back, and within a month, everything happened. Things just broke down really fast. And then at the funeral, before that, it was also my first time deliver a proper speech to over 100 people. And then looking at all those faces, I only knew a very small part of them. And it was then struck me that he has a bigger impact than I know of. Like he served his community, his company, and his, society well to the point that people voluntarily showed up and, said those heartwarming things to me and my mom. So that is when I realized the depth of your life, I wouldn't say is more important. I would say you cannot be too greedy. Having one side of it is good
ooh,
enough.
that's
And then to
good.
me, having the quality side of it is rewarding enough for me. And I do think everything happens for a reason, and there are things you do not have control of. And I think I've discussed spirituality and religion with you because I'm atheist, and
Mhm.
it took me 28 years to discover that atheists are actually the minority in terms of the world population. Most people have a religion. So
Mhm.
that I'm still trying to figuring out my answer on that front, but I do believe everything happens for a reason, and I accept it before complaining about it. The best way would be to not complain about it, but sometimes I still do.
Mhm.
So yeah, quality of life, having that alone is rewarding for me to make life, worth it for me. But then if it's long, great, then I'll make more worth it moments.
Yes, yes. I love it. I love it. In the framework I designed lifespan to do exactly what you said. But this is the way I
Mhm.
put it. Lifespan has a component that says healthcare and then end of life. So it's also almost like you buy a life insurance policy and then you also buy a health insurance policy because they are not one and the same. But how you live your life and how healthy you are depends on that life insurance policy because it goes over a span of time, 15 years, 10 years, 5 years, or whatever. And it costs you for that. What I love about what you pointed out is something that my godmother talks about all the time. My spiritual mom, her name is Pastor Cox. She says, live your life with no regrets. Don't keep rehashing the old. Don't keep going over and over and over about what didn't work, what coulda, shoulda, woulda, when all you have is right now. And so to
Mhm.
me, when I'm hearing you speak, it is to be able to encourage the leader to not just be present, right? And not just to not only be present, but when you are present, making sound decisions to where you don't have any regrets. And when you mentioned that you and Sherry were talking about what if the plane crashed, I love that. Because what if the plane crashed? What am I to do? Which way am I to go? Nowhere. I mean, they do
There, nowhere.
yeah, they do the demonstration. If in the case of emergency, there's a floaty under the chair. They do all they can to give us what they have. But that goes back to what my former podcast guest Leah Perkins talked about is that the analogy here is that in most cases a burnout or emergency or anything, we're thrown a life jacket or a life vest because that's all people are generally able to do because they need to save themselves or they need to preserve themselves. So it's almost like it will behoove us to have something inside of us, right? What I'm calling redemption modes to scale a different outcome. And to me, another way of scaling it is to not is to live without regrets. And another way to scale a level of redemption in the midst of a crisis or midst of an emergency, something you literally can't do anything about, is to just be at peace with who you are, what you've made yourself out to be. And also there's another component here that if in any split second the plane crashes and you have not done, and you are on the other side and you live in regrets, in that moment, you can literally depend on any form of spirituality that you do have. Because that's the critical part about people having some sort of spirituality is because they depend on it to save them because they know they didn't do everything right. So that's a really important component to add to this whole dialogue. I am going to end by always saying to my guests, giving you the last words to say, at this table of redemption, is there anything you're walking away with new, Cecilia, that you've learned? Or number two, is there anything you leaving on the table? Anything, food for thought final thoughts that you want? And number three, is there any wisdoms that you have for me as your friend and colleague as I continue this journey of developing the framework, being turned into an author, and all this other good stuff as I continue to sit in this space at the table of redemption?
I think I I don't think I have said it properly yet, but I really thank you for inviting me to be to invite me to the table and to be part of this podcast. I really, really love how you took criticism back then and how you sit with it. Not not criticism, but like feedbacks. Because
Yeah.
I've learned in my working experience and, you know, people, not everyone can take feedbacks on as well as you did, and how mature and thoughtful you are to actually think about the feedback I provided you and then come up with a better version of it and we discussed and then the truth moment that we had. I that meant a lot to me. And then you also reminded me how like true open-minded individuals should look like. And
Wow.
then especially when you danced at Marshall Gans class, I
Mm.
think you also reminded me how to be fully in the moment. And that is something, and be expressive in the moment. And that is something I think sometimes I lack. And then the whole podcast today, I think the most surprising, I wouldn't say surprising, but my biggest delight is that how well the Chinese philosophy sit with you and hopefully for the audience as well. So what's funny is that when where Sharon and I met in our high school, we have this school model per se. It goes I think the direct translation would be um, we want our students to be globally minded modern citizens with a Chinese soul and a global mind. So
Mm.
to me, it's more like who I am today, actually, because I grew up in China. I went to States for college. I worked in Canada, and then I moved back to the States for my master's program. So I do think I am a global citizen at this point who is anchored in, Chinese heritage. And
Mhm.
then it was at first not easy to embrace, not to embrace, but like to showcase the Chinese heritage part of it because it's too mysterious of a concept for non-Chinese. And even like for myself, I probably only understood 1% of the Chinese philosophy, history, and everything. And for me, I was also like, oh, I was not adequate or proficient enough to tell others about the whole Chinese heritage or, philosophy of quote. But then through my experiences at Huxley and HKS and your conversation with you, I realized people are actually interested in these philosophies.
Mhm.
They don't have to agree with it, but even if thinking about this or be like, oh, that's an interesting thought, I think it's enough for me. So for me, the true challenge of the next chapter of my life, like who I am, and also our business, because music really is an inherent part of culture,
Mhm.
right? So what do we want to do through our business, through our language, and through all the education we receive and we've delivered to our students? So, how to better intertwine or intervene the Chinese heritage part of it, the Chinese culture part of it, to the work we do is, you know, it's kind of re-anchored me a little bit, this podcast.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. I love it. Because you know what? My friends to the audience, mm, my friends that are, I'm trying to cry, are
It's all
from
right.
Oriental descent
Mm-hmm.
is more than Chinese food and nails, you know? I know y'all
Oh,
know.
nails are a big thing that's associated with China. Nails,
Yeah.
like
Getting your nails
manicures. Wow.
done, getting your Chinese
Okay.
food in America is
Mm-hmm.
beyond that. This podcast is
Mm-hmm.
about love. It's about
Yeah.
being able to see beyond the borders of your own circumstance and just have another lens. Like, I got on these glasses to help me see. I got Cecilia on here to help us see through the lens of the Oriental approach to leadership, to philosophy, to friendship, to transitions, to difference, but also to the oneness and unity of heart. And I'm hoping
Mm.
that at the table of redemption, which I named the podcast in the class that Cecilia took with me in HKS. So there's two things. Okay, in
Yeah. And I mean both of them, if you
yes,
think about them.
okay, this is historical for me. So
Yeah.
in Linda's class, she sat next to me when I'm writing the framework, but then in HKS, we had to do speeches, stories, and stuff. So I was in Marshall Gann's class studying his framework. I studied so many frameworks to come up with what I wanted to do. And so Cecilia was there when I mentioned that I want to do this podcast, The Table of Redemption, and I was interested in stories. During that time, no one signed up for stories. So I'm like, well, let me just continue to working on the actual pillars and the framework of it in and of itself. So
Mm.
this is full circle for moment for me too. Like this is pretty special. So I knew when I was writing to you to ask you to be a part of it, it will be monumental for me. And that's what you've been for me today. That Gosh, it feels so good to be here with you and having this moment because so many ideas is a phrase I call they die on the vine. Like in gardening or in harvesting, you go and
Yeah.
it wasn't properly taken care of or taken seriously. So these ideas die on the vine. But the pain of disruption is too heavy for me to allow the redemption framework or the redemption concept to just stay on my desk any longer because it's 20 years old. I've lived through it, I've worked through it in rural communities, building Legacy School of Performing Arts, expanding to 12 locations, being able to deal with all kind of hardship. And I said the only equalizer between all cultures and races will be the word redemption because we all need to figure out how to come back or how to lead in this manner from this place of devastation if that's what it is you have. So thank you, Cecilia, for being here today. I always end the podcast by telling all my guests, I hope that you have come to this table and that you have ordered what you want at this table. At the table, the meal is intellectual excellence. The meal is wisdoms. Today, Cecilia gave you philosophy. She also spoke Mandarin to you. She also gave us insight into, rural China. And then I gave insight into rural America. I mean, we were like yin and yang, back and forth, bringing you this amazing meal that will help you understand that it is your time to shine. Like, what is the work you're doing? How impactful are you in the work? How are you sustaining yourself in the work? Do you remember why you did the work, your purpose for doing the work? And what about your well being? Are you taking care of yourself while you do the work? What about your human intuition? Are you obeying that voice that told you to go left when you should be going right? Like, what's going on with your lifespan? Like, you have to think about these things. And in designing the framework, it took me years to bring it down to just these things. And it took being in Linda's class and being questioned about this, that, and the third for me to say, bam, this is the one I actually want to bring to the public. And I love it so much enough to have a whole podcast dedicated to asking leaders about their own leadership and how are they able to manage and be so successful, especially at a time when you don't feel so successful. You feel icky sometimes trying to wade through all these different ways of learning and doing. And yet someone calls you a leader and someone actually has the nerve to, believe in you and trust you so much. So we're here today to just be lights of hope and examples that even now we are at this table to ask you, and when I find your work, and when I come and visit you, what brings you to the table of redemption? How are you changing humanity? But mostly, how are you changing yourself? I am Rasheen Jamison-Richardson, founder, host, producer, editor, all of that of this particular podcast. And it has been a blessing spending this moment with you, Cecilia. And to everyone else, you have a most amazing and fantastic day. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.
A round of applause.
The Table of Redemption podcast disclaimers: views expressed, branding, and mutual benefit. The Table of Redemption podcast is part of the collaborative refinement phase of the Leadership Redemption Framework before it goes to market. This is a research-based initiative led by myself, Rasheen Jamison-Richardson, your host. Guest participation contributes to scholarly exploration through narrative inquiry and receives platform exposure in return. Rasheen, myself, do not receive financial compensation from guest appearances or their affiliated work. This project is not formally endorsed by Harvard University, Harvard Graduate School of Education, or any institution or any sponsorships at this time. Any reference to anyone's brand, including Harvard's brand, are solely based on my academic experiences as a graduate student and now an alumni, and I do not imply institutional affiliation or approval on any of the content that I am producing. This is all my original work, designed, built, and invented by me across a 20-year experience as an educator and practitioner and researcher. All stories remain the intellectual property of the guest and are shared with mutual respect, transparency, and the shared goal of building bridges of hope and redemption in times of crisis. To continue following the Table of Redemption podcast, you may visit www.thetableofredemption.com. You may be able to find our content on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.